Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What's going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz here, founder of Beard Brand, and we are back with another E-Commerce Conversations put on by Practical E-Commerce. Man, today is probably going to be one of the most exciting talks for me because we're talking about a subject that I have literally no experience at all. So it's going to be tons of questions for me as I try to pick our guest's mind. And on the other end of the table for me here in Austin, Texas, I have Michael Jackness. You may know him if you listen to podcasts. He is the host of Ecom Crew, which is an amazing e-commerce podcast. I recommend you guys go over there and give him a subscription and listen to some of his episodes. In addition to that, why don't you tell us a little bit about the businesses you've done?
Yeah, so I've been in business since 2004. I left my day job in 2004, so it's a long story, but we'll fast forward to the e-commerce phase because otherwise we'll be throughout this whole podcast just talking about the other stuff. But I got into e-commerce as a domain investor of all things and an affiliate marketer, and I had purchased treadmill.com, was my first e-commerce site. And I ran that for a couple of years, sold a few $1 million in fitness equipment, and realized the perils of drop shipping, selling big, heavy pieces of equipment, and being out of control as someone that likes to be in control. So that was actually the very first e-commerce business that I sold as well, which we can talk a little bit about maybe throughout this. And since then, I've been in this high growth, crazy phase. We were running towards trying to create a $10 million company as quick as we could. So we started that in January 2015. And now that it's 2019, we just sold our first brand of that conglomerate that I started that ended up starting 4 brands. So the 4 brands are Ice Wraps, which are hot and cold therapy packs, was the first one I started. And then Color It, which is the one I just sold, which is coloring supplies and products geared towards adults. Wah Baby, which is a baby clothing and toy brand. And Tac Niner, which is a tactical brand. And we also own tactical.com. But the one that I most recently sold was Color It.
Man, I don't know how you can manage 4 different brands like that, and
well.
Your podcast too.
not well. I gotta tell you, it's something I've talked about on my own podcast. I mistakenly naively thought that once I had e-commerce figured out, that it would be easy to cookie cutter, making new brands, making new products, and I realized the saying of if you chase 2 rabbits, both will get away. So quite frankly, I do think that we've done, and I'm not saying that we haven't still grown. I mean, we've still went from 0 to almost 10 million in that time frame. But I'm also a perfectionist, and I see a lot of things that could have been done better. And I feel like if we focus just on 1 company or maybe 2 rather than 4, we could have even done better. And I think that it's a lesson in entrepreneurial life. If you chase that shiny object, which we all do, the squirrel syndrome, whatever, these things all are sayings for a reason. I'm definitely very guilty of it because, it's exciting starting something new, and ideas are a lot easier to think of than execute. Sometimes you can think of something in 10 seconds, but it could take 2 years to execute on that. And I got in a little bit of trouble with that. So by selling one of the brands, it's also a lifestyle choice, some stuff we'll talk about on this podcast, but it was just a way to kind of to shed one of the things off my plate, reduce some risk and some other things as well.
Okay. So let's get into a little bit more about the business. Obviously, it's an e-commerce business.
E-commerce, yeah.
Is it primarily direct to consumer on your domain, or is it through Amazon or a blend? Can you open up about?
Yeah. So the one that we just sold, again, Color It. At the time that we sold it, it was about 80% Amazon and 20% on colorit.com through Shopify. Now, if we turn off Amazon, I think that we could have maybe made it to the same level as being like 50-50. But so many people would come to Color It and then search on Amazon, find the products there, already be a Prime member. A lot of our marketing would push people towards Amazon on purpose to help push those products there. There's, Amazon's like, I love to hate them kind of scenario, right? It's just like, you can't ignore them because like it's half of e-commerce, and the types of products that we're selling, there's so much traffic on Amazon. Someone's searching for something like gel pens or colored pencils or these types of searches. And because of the marketing that we were doing off Amazon and the brand and the loyalty that we built, we could drive traffic to Amazon and have this unfair advantage of outside traffic generating sales that would allow us to rank for these like ultra competitive terms. And when you bring that equation into the mix, it becomes more worthwhile to send traffic to Amazon than actually have it on your own site, even though it's Jekyll and Hyde. Like one person's like, Jekyll's on one side saying, "What the hell are you doing?" The other one's like, "Send all the traffic to Amazon because ranking number one for gel pens on Amazon's worth $500,000 a year or $1 million a year, whatever the number is." It's a lot of money,
right?
So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic.
So that business, you said you started that one in 2015.
We really started it in 2016. If you look at, the concept started in 2015. We released our first book in 2015. But a lot of it was like just tinkering with things and like leading up to that point. We got serious about the business in 2016.
Okay.
So it was about a 3-year period of building it up, and then we sold it.
Okay. And for those who aren't familiar with Color It, is it coloring books for adults?
Yeah.
Or?
So, and there was like this huge trend that started in like 2014-ish or 2015, where adults love to color as a kid, and like it's this pastime that they remember from their childhood. And now instead of it being like a big fat crayon with like big lines and big spaces, it's like these intricate designs and things that and they take a more artistic approach towards it. And what we also found is, from our clientele, like after multiple years of running this business, the other thing that we realized, which was actually kind of sad to me and just a realization of our own mortality, but people get older and they can't be as active. And the stories we would hear, a lot of people were coloring just to kind of get their mind off their health issues, or they might be at the doctor's office, or a lot of them, a lot of people in older age don't have any money to like really be going out and doing things. So this was a relatively inexpensive way for them to pass time and have a hobby that they really enjoyed. And some of the stuff that would come in would be like awe-inspiring. I'm not an artist or a colorist myself,
right,
but the submissions we would get from our customers, you would be like, "Oh my God, that's just like, it looks like something you would want to frame and throw one on the wall." So it was pretty cool.
I can imagine it's pretty cool. And then you would end up selling accessories as well, like the color pens.
It's interesting how you might have noticed this in your own business potentially. I don't know all the story behind your business, but we launched as just a coloring book company, and we thought that was all we were going to do. And then at some point we're like, you know what? Like, why are we not selling the blades as well with the razor, right? So we launched some colored pencils, and we realized quickly that the accessories were going to be more lucrative than the books themselves. But over the last year, the books have actually kind of caught back up because we have enough titles now, and we rank really well for a lot of these book terms on Amazon. And they're also really defensible because we hand draw the designs. They're all copyrighted works of art. You can come up with the concept to make a book like ours, but it's really hard to execute on it. Mm-hmm. Because you have to have an artist, number one. You have to be able to – we differentiated our product, which was what led to our success. So we made – instead of just a floppy book that you would go find at Walmart, a coloring book, we made hardback covers. We found artist-grade paper to put in the book. We printed it single-sided. We use a particular printing technique that doesn't like rub off when it gets hit by an alcohol marker, which a lot of people like to color with markers or gel pens. We put a spiral binding on the book. We perforate the pages. We do a bunch of different things to make a higher quality book. And that level of quality comes with a very high MOQ. And it's also hard to find the printer that can even execute on all those different components. So we've differentiated ourselves both in the manufacturing process. We carved out a moat just because like you need $50,000 to $100,000 to even get started making, printing at the level that we do. And we also have the art component. So that part of our business kind of came back around full circle, and over the last year was the fastest growing part of the business.
Yeah. So you're manufacturing, you're keeping inventory, you're buying beforehand and selling on Amazon for your books. Is that the same with your pens, or are you just simply private labeling the pencils? And
Yeah. So the books are manufactured in the United States, and the pens and the pencils, et cetera, are all manufactured in China. And just my personality is such that I would never want to just release the same widget everyone else has. If I'm going to put something out, I want it to be substantially better. So the reason we became so successful with the accessories is because of that. So when we decided to launch gel pens, as a for instance, I looked at the landscape of what was already available on Amazon, and what was there were like these $9 or $10 sets of gel pens that you would see at Walmart or Target. And I read all the reviews, and I also, at this point, even though I wasn't a colorist, I could relate to our customers so well because like I was answering a lot of their emails and taking the phone calls like in the early days before we had people doing that. And I really felt like I intimately like understood their problems. And what I realized was, okay, well, they're buying a pack of 96 different color gel pens, and there's like 7 shades of red, for instance. Mm-hmm. Well, which one do I need to pick back up to like finish that same thing I was drawing a day ago? So let's name all the pens and let's put a color code number on all the pens. And the only thing I realized, because again of the things I talked about earlier, a lot of these people were coloring on the go, whether they were like at a doctor's office or whatever it might be. Unfortunately, a lot of people like to color like during cancer treatments and these types of things that just kind of get their mind off of things. And so I'm like, well, we should put them in a nice travel case. Like, why not include a case? And the other thing I started thinking about was, well, wait a second, like gel pens run out of ink really quickly. So we can sell refill sets to make it easy for people to be able to cheaply refill their pens. And by the way, let's include one of those refill sets in our set so people don't complain, well, the pens ran out too. We wanted to try to get as many 5-star reviews as possible. And finally, we put it in like a really nice package, like a magnetic flip-up box that also dubs as like a case to put like a supply chest or whatever to put your pens or other mediums in. And then people see our color at brand name constantly, like in their closet or in their desk when they're storing their stuff. So like all these things together, like any one of those things alone isn't a big deal, but you put all those things together and we substantially changed the marketplace on Amazon and elsewhere for gel pens. And we had that all to ourselves for about 18 months until it started getting copied, which is pretty typical. Anywhere you see success and really anything to do with business, people are going to follow you. They're going to copy you and follow you. And it still bothers me quite a bit, but like at the same time, like because I've been doing this stuff for like 15 years and I've seen it happen over and over again, what I realize is that I just need to continue, like never get complacent and continue to innovate, know that there's a target on my back, and just continue to innovate and move forward and have something else that's cutting edge that they're not going to be able to do. And unfortunately, the gel pen part started eroding a little bit, but we still do very well with them. It's just that there's a couple just flat out copycats out there, one of which we had to sue. It was my first experience ever suing somebody. I don't like ever having to do that, but they stole our copyrights. We've paid to have a copyright done. They stole all of our pen names. And I'm like, I can't let that happen. So we had to sue them. But what we couldn't stop was them making their own names and basically copying all the rest of the stuff I just talked about. Right. So unfortunately, that's what happened.
So this business, is it just yours or do you have any business partners?
I had a partner with this one. All the other ones I own wholly. But it was actually a funny story. Back when my grandma was still alive, I would go to visit her in New Jersey at least twice a year. I was like always really committed to trying to spend time with her. And when I lived on the East Coast, I would see her even more. But I've lately been living all over the world and other parts of the West Coast. And so I only got back to her about twice a year. I have a very small family. So I have one cousin. And we were talking one day. And I was like, you got to get on this Amazon bandwagon. Because I was like, this is like early on. This was like 2015. Like, I'm like, this is so easy. And it was easier back then. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy now. It's definitely, things have changed. At the time, though, compared to other things I had done in business, I saw an opportunity. Comparatively, it was easy, at least to me, and what I was seeing. And I was telling them about it. And I'm like, look, I'm not telling you this because I want to get in business with you. I'm telling you this because I think you can go do this on your own. Go find a niche and go do it. And, a couple months would go by and they would call me with an idea, like just to like pick my brain. I'm like, that's probably not the best thing to do, like for these reasons. And then this happened for a couple of times. Then they called me one day about coloring. And I'm like, that's something I'm actually really interested in doing. Within a minute, really, I knew this is the niche I've been also looking for. Light, easy to ship, differentiatable, no shelf life, passionate people about it, direct interest on Facebook for this, something that is consumable, that they're going to buy more than one of, like all these different criteria that I had figured out in e-commerce that are important. They're actually really hard to find niches that apply to like all these criteria, right? Like the perfect niche. And this was like immediately, I'm like, this is the thing I've been looking. So we ended up getting a business together, and they were a minority partner in that business.
Yeah. So 10 minutes in, this sounds like a perfect business. Why why are we selling it?
Yeah, and it's, I think that things in life change, right? So for me, there's a couple of really big reasons why I wanted to sell this business. And I'm also looking to sell another one next year. First of all, I think that everyone has a different risk profile, right? So, I mean, and I don't ever criticize, like to somebody, $1 might be a ton of money. To someone else, $1 million is nothing, right? So money is a relative thing. And for us, we had gotten to a point over since 2015, like I said, when we sold treadmill.com and started this new brand conglomerate called Terran to like go towards $10 million. And along the way, we accumulated $1.3 million in inventory. And so now there's $1.3 million in inventory sitting in warehouses across these 4 brands. And I felt like the risk profile for me had changed to the point where I was losing sleep, because as we continued to grow, we needed more and more cash, more and more inventory, and realizing that I wasn't in control of my destiny because a lot of my business was on Amazon. Just the thought of like, what if, like the what if creeps in your head as a business owner, the doomsday scenario. When it was $500,000 in inventory, I was completely comfortable with that what if scenario. But the way that I would explain this is, if you and I could play a game right now of rolling a 10-sided die, and I got to win 7 times out of 10, and you got to win 3 times out of 10, and we can play that for $1,000 a roll, I would play that all night long. Like, I know I'm going to win. But if you asked me to roll the die and do that for $1 million, I couldn't roll the die, because even though like I'm going to win 7 out of 10 times, I know that that's a good long-term bet. 30% of the chance I'm going to lose, and I can't stomach losing $1 million. So that's probably about the best analogy that I've come up with, because I get asked this question a lot right now of why it was kind of time to take some risk off the table. I feel like I'm still in a really good position. I feel like I still, more times than not, I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to win. But I also know from 15 years of business that not everything goes the right way all the time. And that just, it started to become like an overwhelming feeling, to the point where I felt like I was going to have a panic attack just thinking about the worst case scenario. And I felt like it was time to shut off one of the brands. Along with that, you're selling the inventory. And in an e-commerce business, the time that you really make money, where you really see the fruits of your labor, is when you sell the e-commerce business. A lot of other businesses, you're like when I was doing affiliate marketing before e-commerce, the money was like in the bank. As soon as I made it, it was in the bank. But with e-commerce, if you're growing at 100% per year like we were, there was never any money in the bank. Yeah. It's like the tax return looks great. The IRS has their handout. The accountant's like, great job, you made a lot of money last year, but there's no money in the bank. And that's just the way that e-commerce is in a high-growth e-commerce business. Now, if you're growing at 5 or 10% per year, it's obviously a different story. We were growing at 100% per year, and there was just never enough money, like in cash in the bank. So those two things combined was like, you know what, I need to divest from one of these brands, take some risk off the table, and put my, reset that balance for me. And the reason we did color it over the other 3, I did have the partner in color it, and they were also, they were in a different position in life where they kind of needed the money. And so it was a good opportunity for all of us to just to sell and let it go. I am sad to see it go. I think it's a great business. I think that, but I don't think it's a unicorn. I think that there's plenty of other things out there. It's just, you got to be picky and choosy, but there's plenty of other things out there. You have a great business yourself, right? I mean, it fits a lot of those criteria that I mentioned as well, but it also has the copycat quotient, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I wanted to remind our listeners who haven't started an e-commerce business, but the IRS considers inventory like cash. So if you bought $500,000 of inventory one year, and all that money's tied up into inventory, the IRS doesn't care. They want they consider that $500,000 of profit.
I always make two jokes around this scenario. I make the joke of I can't pay my taxes in gel pens because it's the same thing you're talking about. And there's a scene in Goodfellas, if you ever seen the movie Goodfellas, where the guy's like, I want my money, where's my money? And like, that's the IRS, right? It's just like, but yeah, I mean, it is a tough business from a cash flow standpoint. I love e-commerce. Like, I want to continue to do more e-commerce. I love this business more than just about anything else I've done. But the perception of it that e-commerce is easy is a fallacy. There's a lot of struggles in e-commerce, and cash flow is definitely one of those.
So you guys came to agreement, you and your business partner, that you want to sell the business.
Yep.
What are the first steps from there? Is it, getting your books in order? Is it, writing out SOPs, or was all that done beforehand to just kind of have this turnkey business? And what were your expectations with the sell? Like, did you want to be linked to it for a period of time to hand it over? How big is your team? I'm asking a million questions.
Yeah, there's a
here.
lot of things. I try to remember all these different things. So part one of that question was, once we decided to sell, like, what kind of happened from there? So I think I don't know if this is exclusive to e-commerce or not. I think this is just a general business thing, but I think you can have two modes of business. You either you're focused on growth, hyper growth, or you're like focusing on profit. And it's very hard to do both of those things together. So in the phase that we were growing the business at that 100% per year, we weren't focused like on the bottom line number as much. It's like, let's grow this top line number. My feeling was that when the time comes that I want to focus on profit, it's easier to switch that lever than it is to switch the, like, let's get in the high growth mode lever. The high growth mode lever requires like all this like priming. You got to like develop new products and start like figuring out sales funnels and build your list and like things that just take a long time on the calendar, like, many, many months or years to develop and get moving that way. But when you decide I want to like focus on my profit, you can almost do that within a month. So when we decide to stop the high growth velocity, we want to sell our business in a few months from now. Let's start focus on that profit. That happened relatively quickly. We like doubled our bottom line number. Really started throwing cash out of the business. It was a good opportunity for us to produce about like 8 to 9 months of financials at this new net profit number and then throw it up for sale. So that's what we did. We waited 6 to 9 months, whatever it was. I forgot the exact timing now. And then we put it up for sale actually in January of this year. And about within 3 weeks, we had multiple offers.
Wow.
I think that we were fortunate in the fact of who we used as a broker.
Okay, so you went through a broker.
We did use a broker.
Were they specialized in e-commerce?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good friends with a guy named Joe Valley from Quiet Light Brokerage. I'm sure he loves the plug here. And so I went with him. I think that selling a business is a very personal thing. You want someone you can trust. I definitely trusted him because of the relationship and all the other things I've heard from other people who have used him. And they specialize in e-commerce businesses. And he's also a straight shooter. So I talked to him the moment I was ready to start thinking about selling the business, and we talked about how to best position the business for sale, which included, let's spend some time making that net profit number look as good as we can without doing anything dirty, right? I mean, you don't want to do something disingenuous. So we really focused, we really buttoned down. We did not launch any new products, which is a costly thing. We started optimizing our PPC better. We got rid of all the SaaS products that we hadn't thought of for 2 years that were like just being charged on the credit card, and just did some things like that were just housekeeping items really that really helped the bottom line significantly. And yeah, like I said, as soon as we put the thing up for sale, we had multiple offers within just a few weeks. And the company that we ended up selling to is actually trying to buy multiple e-commerce companies and roll them up into one big company and then sell that eventually to a private equity. Mm-hmm. So we were their third purchase of whatever number of purchases they're going to make over time.
Okay.
There was a couple other questions there. I forgot the other ones.
Yeah. Well, how big was your team, or how, like basically the complexity of the business? Was it just the two of you all running it, or?
No, we have, at the time before we sold, we had 15 total employees for the business.
And were y'all doing like 7 figures or?
Yeah, high 7 figures total. Okay. Like this is between all the brands, right? So like not just the one brand that we sold. And then so some mistakes that we made that I wish, obviously history is history. You can't go back and rewrite history. But when we were building this conglomerate with the 4 different brands, we ran it as one LLC, one Amazon account, one checking account, one credit card. Our employees would work on every different brand at any different time. It worked really well for us. because we were really efficient at a bunch of different things than separating things out into different brands. But when it comes time to sell and you're like, I want to sell this one piece of my business, that raises a lot of eyebrows as a buyer when you're looking at it going, okay, well, what stuff are you going to sweep under the rug that really belong to this business? What employees am I going to get? Are they going to be trained properly? What systems are going to break? That there's like all these what if questions. So that every what if question like lowers the valuation of your business. It was a pretty painful process, honestly, like having to break all that apart, go through due diligence. We ended up selling the Amazon account. The one Amazon account that we had went with the business because a buyer's not going to say, oh, I'll just make a new Amazon account and hope everything goes okay on this like 7-figure purchase I'm about to make. So we had to sell our original Amazon account with the business and make 3 new Amazon accounts, 3 new companies, and break out all the different brands. And so we were now in a position when we go to sell the next business that it's completely delineated. It'll be very easy to sell. There won't be any what if questions. But the biggest ones that we had were, are you going to let the Amazon account come with this? What's going to happen to all the inventory, the employees, because they were working on multiple brands. So we had to answer all these questions and satisfy a buyer that was willing to accept our answers, which lowers our buyer pool. And so moving forward, what we've done with our company now, each one of the employees that we have works for a brand. They're not allowed to touch the other ones. They work for that brand. They still work for Terran, this higher level conglomerate company, but they only work on one brand, and that's their assignment. We ended up having 4 employees go with the sale. Most of our employees are in the Philippines. I really enjoy working in that environment, more of a remote environment. They do a great job. E-commerce is a relatively low margin business, so it's really difficult to have a huge team stateside. In the type of business that we're running, it was more of a commodity, definitely lower margin business. We didn't have the type of IP that you have in like your business, for instance, where you can have a little bit higher margin. So we were, kind of always like hamstrung by that. So having that remote team allowed us to just be able to afford all the manpower that we were doing. And we also had a couple of people in the United States as well. But yeah, so 4 of those people went with the sale, and we were able to satisfy the buyer to say, okay, because like here's the timesheets. That was one thing that we did a really good job with. We were really good at accounting every step of the way and really good at keeping track of people's time every step of the way. So we could say, hey, look, like over the last year, it was the man hours that were going in to color it were about 4 people's time. Month in and month out, very consistently over the last year. Here's the 4 people we think will be best to go with this business. And we had about 10 weeks from the time that we started talking to buyers to the time that we closed the sale to get that in order. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Now, how are the valuations? Was it based on your net profit? Was it based on, run rate?
Yeah. So most e-commerce, there's obviously always outliers, right? So the bulk of e-commerce transactions in terms of businesses that are buying and selling are going for a multiple of EBITDA. So earnings before taxes, interest, and amortization, whatever the hell that thing stands for. So plus add back. So there's going to be a bunch of things that you're allowed to add to that number, to that bottom line number. And some examples would be like an owner's salary. For instance, you can put your salary back on that number. If you have like your car running through your business, you can throw that back in that number. If you're running like your personal cell phone or just like these other obvious expenses, you can throw back into that number, and then you'll get a multiple of that final number. You can also add back in one-time expenses. So if you had like a one-time legal matter that you had to take care of, or if you redesigned your website and it was a one-time thing that you're not going to do moving forward, you can make an argument to add that back in. We had an interesting add back that we did. We renegotiated one of our best-selling items down, the price of it down significantly. We found a really good sourcing agent that helped us renegotiate our prices, and we did an add back saying, hey, this is the new price, and we want to apply that price so that for that cost of goods back for the last trailing 12 months to establish this number, and they accepted that. So typically what you do is you take your trailing 12 months of earnings and then multiply that by whatever valuation you can get. And in our case, it was 3.1. And then you add inventory on top of that, and that's the final number that you're going to sell your business for.
Okay. Do you think like businesses, the larger they get, the higher valuations they're getting, or the smaller they get, I assume it's smaller valuations as well. Is that kind of what you saw?
Yeah. There's definitely some magic line of like 1 million per year in EBITDA and above, where like the multiples definitely start increasing significantly. And that's because the buyer pool that's looking at those businesses is another whole buyer pool. It's usually like private equity funds or people that are, just have tons of money that they're looking to deploy, and they're not interested in doing that in these smaller businesses. It's not worth their time. So the valuation goes up significantly if you can get over that hump. We weren't quite there, so that wasn't an option for us. Other things that can help, channel diversification, any type of intellectual property, having a trademark, being in business, the longer you've been in business, the more that helps. SKU diversity, things of this nature. So things that, a buyer might be weary of. 100% of your sales are on Amazon. That's not good for your valuation. 95% of your sales come from one SKU. That's not going to help your valuation. It's a 6-month-old business. That's not going to help. There's like all these different things. So we had a lot of things going for us with Colorit that helped get a higher valuation than other businesses that are going for lower than 3x. But we could have got a higher valuation if we didn't have some of the other problems that I mentioned, with most of which were the commingling issues.
Yeah.
So we've solved those moving forward. I wasn't prepared to wait another year to solve those issues, because we would have had to solve the issue and then wait 12 months for that new business to have a trailing 12-month tax return filed. And I just didn't want to wait. I mean, it kind of was like, I'm the type of person, when I'm ready to do something, I just kind of want to do it, and that's all I can think about. And that's how that was for that period of time. And now that it's done, I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's next thing.
There's risk in the marketplace too, right?
Yes.
The buyers may not be there. The stock market may crash. This stuff.
I'm really worried about that.
Yeah.
I know this is not a political show, so I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah.
But the one stat that I look at that I think that you just can't ignore is that this is like a 10-year boom economy. We're now in the longest boom economy in the history of like the modern world. Every economy is cyclical, and I'm just worried that we're kind of at the tail end of that. Like statistically, we have to be, like I was using that 70% win rate thing. Like statistically, we have to be at the tail end, whether it's 1 month or 2 more years or whatever it lasts. I don't know, but I have to at least think about that and consider what's going to happen when that happens. And so that was something else I'm very worried about. And with that comes, if it's a really bad recession, people don't have money to buy, things that are wants. We don't sell needs, right? This is something that people want to do. It's not a need. And along with that also is the money supply dries up. Interest rates are already starting to go up. I see a lot of money flooding into this, which makes me also worry, because usually when you start seeing those signals, it's a pretty good indication that pretty soon over the horizon, something's going to change. So it just was starting to worry me a little bit. And now I can rest easy knowing, hey, I have this stockpile of cash in the bank. It's mine. No one can take it away from me now.
So, well, let's talk about that. Did they just write a check and then you turned over the business? And
yeah. So the terms of, now every business deal is different in this case. The deal that we came to was 90% of the purchase price was paid the day that we closed in cash. 10% was held back in escrow for 90 days to ensure a smooth transition, just to make sure that all the things I promised them that are going to happen. And in our case, the inventory, we took a 12-month note, 12 equal payments at 5% interest for them to pay me for the inventory. And normally I would never agree to that, but I thought that it was the right thing to do because of the amount of inventory that we had for this business, which was a little bit over efficient, over the efficiency line, right? So I think that our business, if we were operating at peak efficiency in terms of inventory, we would have had about $300,000 in inventory, but we had about $450,000 in inventory. So it's not fair to a buyer to be to
pay for your mistakes.
To pay for that mistake. And it wasn't really that it was a mistake necessarily on a lot of them, because it's like an idiosyncrasy to Colorit specifically of the MOQs for a lot of things. And there were definitely some mistakes. Every e-commerce business that's been around for 5, you probably have stuff in your warehouse that you're embarrassed to look at, right? So we had some of that for sure. And I actually agreed to write that down. So that we wrote off $25,000 in inventory that I said, you just get that for free. You can either throw it away if you want, we kind of came to terms of like, this is the really bad performing stuff, like the embarrassing mistake stuff. We had about 25K of that, which sucked. I mean, that was a hard thing to just say, okay, well, but whether they bought it or not, I was probably going to throw it away. Right. I mean, like, it wasn't moving. It was just bad. I wouldn't necessarily even call it a mistake, because like at the time that we released those products, we did it with good intentions. They didn't sell as well as the others. And I think that we had a pretty good run. It's like if we're developing millions of dollars worth of products and we had $25,000 worth of duds, or maybe you put it in terms of like 9.5 out of 10, things were going pretty right. That's a pretty good track record. But yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing. It's a black eye, whatever you want to whatever you want to call it. So we wrote that off. And then the other inventory, they're going to pay us over 12 months, because if we were to start today, like knowing everything I know right now, and just start writing checks to buy inventory, it would be about $300,000 worth of inventory if done optimally. And so for them to have to write another $150,000 check to buy all the inventory and the purchase price all up front was a big ask. It was going to be hard to find someone that would accept that. And I'm the kind of person that would never ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I was like, I wouldn't do that. There's no way in hell that I would agree to like do those things. So, and I told the broker that, and so we came to an agreement pretty quickly on those term points, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think if you show goodwill on both ends, it kind of just makes the whole process.
Yeah,
I would imagine it would make the whole process smoother, because I've never gone through that.
It did. I mean, it was an incredible. We got really lucky. I mean, like the buyer has been incredible. I've tried to show the same in return. I think that's why it's probably been such an incredible relationship, because I've worked really hard to make sure it's been smooth for them, and they've done the same in return for me. It doesn't always work that way. I've bought and sold a lot of businesses. I've bought businesses where the day that I wrote the check, I could never contact them again. They just disappeared. They ghosted me.
Right.
And I don't want to be that guy. Like, again, I want to treat others like I like to be treated. These guys paid 7 figures in cash.
Well, you may have another business for them too, right?
That too. Honestly, I think there's a very good chance that they would buy the other business. And I want to be able to sleep at night. Like, I mean, money at the end of the day, it's important, et cetera, but like, I don't want to compromise my values because I want to make an extra 50K.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's not going to make a huge difference in my life. I mean, I'm lucky to be able to say that. I get that, but it was really important to me to make sure that things were done properly.
Yeah. Final question. Is there any kind of like giant regrets or lessons learned over the years of buying and selling businesses that you wish you could really do differently? Or warnings to people out there who are trying to sell their business, like completely, stay away from this, or this is a red flag.
People trying to sell their business?
People trying to sell their business.
So you asked both on the buying and selling. So let me start with the easy one, selling your business. For me, I've never regretted selling a business. I've sold several now. I'm really good at compartmentalizing things. I don't know why I'm okay with this, but I always keep in mind at the moment that I'm making the decision to sell, to remember the space and time that I was in. You can't look back. It's the same thing happened in the stock market. Like, why did I sell my Apple?
Right.
When it's like up at $200 a share now, when I sold it at $100, that's not fair, right? So I mean, I look at the moment. It was the right decision at the time, and I'm always going to do something else and move forward. And the things that have happened since then couldn't have happened if I didn't make that decision at that moment. So for me, it's been really easy. Now, as far as recommendations on the selling side, what I told the broker, he's going to be mad at me for mentioning this, but like, I don't want to get paid with my money. So I didn't want to hear about any earnouts or any of this other type of stuff that people do a lot of times, structuring things. I'm like, write me the check. This is what the business costs. It's a lot of money. I get it. But I want to be paid for the business up front so I can then take that money and deploy it to do something else I want with it. I don't want to get paid for that over a year or 2 or 3 or whatever it might be, because all you're doing then is just paying me with the profits I would have earned moving forward. And I take on the risk of you like not being able to pay me.
Yeah.
So that was something that I think that was important to me. And I would recommend to other people looking to sell their business not to fall into that trap, because a lot of people will ask for that. The other thing I would recommend when you're selling your business and doing any type of negotiation in life is you have to be pliable in some way. You can't always get everything that you want. So everybody is looking to buy or sell or do whatever transaction for their set of needs, for their reasons. And you have to listen to what they're saying. And and accommodate some part of or all the things that they're looking for in some way that makes sense for both of you. And I wish, I was talking about jokingly about politics earlier. I wish our politicians would do the same thing right now, right? It's just like if you just sit there and butt heads and like entrench yourself in where you're at, then nothing ever gets done. So that's on the sell side. On the buy side, there's a lot of things I would recommend. I don't know how far you want me to get into this. I know it's a 30-minute podcast, so I'll try to hit the highlights.
Yeah.
Number one, make sure that you do some type of due diligence. Don't just take the seller's word at whatever they're telling you. There's a lot of really morally questionable people in the world. I guess that's probably the nicest way to put it. More than probably 50% of the people that are like selling things out there are trying to pull something over on you in some way, shape, or form. So either doing due diligence yourself or hiring a third-party company to do it would be like one of the most important things I would say is to do. The company that bought me hired a company called Centurica, professional due diligence company that specializes in e-commerce due diligence. It took like 5 or 6 weeks of me like basically every day doing nothing but what they were telling me to do for them to comb through every detail of my business. And they found a bunch of mistakes, honestly. Like I was really upset about because I like things to be perfect. But they're really good. They found a bunch of these like little things that I didn't even know about in my business that were wrong accounting wise.
Right.
So I think that's important. The other thing I would say that's really important is you have to be willing to walk away. It's really easy to get emotionally attached or feel like you've put so much time into something and you get excited about it. Put yourself in a position, if you can, it's really tough to think a year or two down the road of how much regret you have because things didn't work out or when things get hard and the excitement's worn off. It's like dating a new girlfriend or something, right? Or something like that. I can't barely remember back to those days. I've been married so long, but it's important to think further down the line when like the going gets tough and you could have just walked away. When you start convincing yourself, it's just that one thing that I found out, that those two things I found out, and I'm like, I really like this business and I'm going to like let those go anyway. There's always another business. There's always another train that's going to pull in the station. The more patient you are, you don't need to get analysis paralysis.
Right.
I think that there's another end of that spectrum, but you have to be willing to walk away. If things aren't fitting, if you aren't comfortable, you're probably writing a huge check and or taking on debt. A lot of these deals require getting a small business loan or whatever, and you're going to have debt that's personally guaranteed. You need to make sure that this is the right business for you. This is the right opportunity for you. I've looked at a lot of businesses over my time, and there's a lot of people I know that are doing these roll-ups and conglomerate things now. Most of them are looking at 100 businesses before they buy one. So it's okay to look at a lot of things before you make that decision. So I think those are probably the highlights of the things I would be thinking about before getting into it.
Yeah. I certainly could probably talk about this all night long.
Yeah.
The good thing about this chat is there's a lot more content from you. So I want to wrap this up with you telling all of our listeners where they can find you, what's the best way to reach out to you if you want to do that. Of course, your podcast and all that.
Sure. Yeah, man. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about that. So, man, I've been blogging and podcasting about this entire journey that we were kind of talking about since 2015 at EcomCrew, ECOMCREW.com. 250 podcast episodes. You can find it on iTunes. There's a bunch of written content on ecomcrew.com. And I do that because I just genuinely love business and entrepreneurship. The thing that's really been fun about EcomCrew is it's allowed me to meet people like you and be on things like this. If it wasn't for EcomCrew, I'd be back in my office in my little hermit shell doing what I'm best at, which is like tinkering at a computer. So it's been a lot of fun, and I really enjoy meeting tons of other entrepreneurs, talking to tons of other entrepreneurs, doing things like this. And yeah, you can find out about all that stuff over at EcomCrew.
Sweet, man. Well, this has been another e-commerce conversation. Hope you guys were able to take away some nuggets from this awesome chat with Michael Jackness. I am Eric Banholtz. As always, thanks for listening. Cheers, and keep on growing.